other lessons from the class of 2000. Greg?
I think as you're coming out, one of the things you got to be careful of, because I think I did this to a certain degree in my first job, is everybody wants to be an athletic director or be the GM or kind of be there, and you have to kind of be careful about how public you are in those intentions, because you come to, when I went to Bowling Green, I mean, half the staff was kind of wanted to go somewhere else, and half the staff that was their home. They live there, that's their whole lives, and and it's very important to them. So when they think that somebody's just kind of coming in and using this as a stepping stone to go somewhere else, I think that it can kind of turn you off, or you might miss opportunities that they think, well, hey, we're gonna need somebody to take on this big project or maybe oversee a sport or do something. But if they have in your mind that you're going to leave in the next 12 to 18 months, then you can lose opportunities that could really long term serve you well. So I think if you have aspirations to advance, I think that's not a bad thing, and I think you always need to be mindful of how you're going to make the next step in your career. But I think you need to be careful, and sometimes coming out of this program, people know that people come out of this program go to do great things, but you need to take the time and relationships, get to know the people that are going to be there 20 years from down the road, because you might start off as Ross Bjork, who was the just got hired at the AD at Western Kentucky, was a graduate assistant there, or an intern there, and then 10, 15 years down the road, he's the athletic director there. So I think it's just kind of building the relationships, doing things the right way, investing in the place where you are. There might come an option down the road sooner rather than later to take the next step in your career, but kind of live in the moment, do a good job while you're there, and things kind of have a way of working out if you do that.
Terry?
One of the things that I learned is that a lot of people at this program, you were the cream of the crop, and you were the leaders, but when you go out into the real world, you can't always be the leader, and that's okay. It's okay to be the person who is the team player, and you can still lead. You just don't have to be the boisterous leader that everybody looks to. But I've learned over time and all the things that I've done, I've exhibited leadership skills and learned to be a leader by not always being the boisterous one, but making sure I make an impact in the things that I do, and voicing my opinion when I need to, and speaking up when it's warranted. I think people always say, Terry, you're kind of quiet, but when you speak up, people do listen to what you have to say, because you're not the one always talking. So you're adding value to the conversation. So I would just say you've got a lot of leaders in this room, but know that when you go out into the real world, you're going to have to pick and choose your opportunities and your times in which you lead as the boisterous leader, or just kind of lead and be a team player.
I think one of the simplest skills or assets that you can have is always relate. The ability to relate to everyone in business is absolutely crucial. No matter, all the great leaders can relate to the guy that drops them off in the taxi at the meeting, to the CEO that he's sitting across the table from. Always treat them with respect. You just never know when that taxi driver will, win lotto and want to form a company and put you in charge of it because he's all of a sudden got $100 billion. That's the type of, when you're in the business world, that's what happens. You just never ever know. And that's one thing I've always noticed from the people that I've dealt with, the good people, is that they always treat, the person that serves them the drink at a meeting, they'll treat them the same as they'll, no one's bigger than anyone else, and that's probably one of the key things I've learned.
Okay. Next question I want you to focus on is.
That's boring. Have a seat. Have a seat. Have a seat.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm doing double duty here. Thank you all for coming back.
Doc Higgins is checking him out in the back of the room. The next question I have for you evolves around the word change. A lot can change in 10 years. So if you just look at Ohio University, since you left, we've added an MBA component to the program today. We started a Center for Sports Administration. We're getting ready to look at some online education. If I ask you all to look in your crystal balls to predict what will change in this industry over the next 10 years so that our students can get some of your insights. What's going to change in the next 10 years before this class comes back and celebrates their 10-year anniversary? And change could be specific to your part of the industry or just your thoughts on where we're going as an industry of sport.
I'll just speak for where I think athletics may go in the next 10 years. I think you're going to see a lot more of the 3 divisions starting to do even more their own thing. I think right now, Division I does its thing, Division II, Division III, and right now the public may not know as much about Division II and Division III, but I do think that is going to change as Division II and III really start to continue to set their identities and distinguish ourselves from Division I intercollegiate athletics. So I think 10 years from now, I think you're going to look at intercollegiate athletics and you're going to start to really see a distinguishing factor between the 3 divisions and understand that each of the divisions make up the entire NCAA, but each of us have our own sort of different mission, philosophy for intercollegiate athletics, but I've seen that started to change within the last 5 years, and I think it's just going to continue to do that within the next 10 years.
Yeah, what's going to change in golf in the next 10 years? I've become an avid golf fan.
Well, I think, I see my friend from Beijing, I think, is here, but I think I spent some time in China recently, and I think, just like in all sports, everyone's looking at newer markets, NBA, NFL, and it's no different for golf. There was just one interesting thing I heard from there. There's 250,000 golfers in China right now. So, you do the math, where the growth might be, So, I look at it as just, that's where we're going, and I think that's, I can't speak for every sport, but it just seems like there's a lot of growth out there and finding new markets. And I don't think we would have seen that or realized that as much 10 years ago when we were here. So.
You put an international perspective on what do you see looking in your crystal ball over the next 10 years? What kind of change can we look for?
The business that we deal mostly in is the sport of rugby union, which is a very young professional sport. It only turned professional in 1995, so it's probably, we will see a lot of change in it, but it's a lot different than, it's a different kind of change, if you like, than from, sports here that have even, the likes of golf and collegiate sport that have been in existence, the organisations or participants have been in existence for, decades or 100 years or whatever it may be. So the change is a little different. New markets is, I think, what Dave touched on is definitely something that rugby's experiencing. The competitions encompass, the major competitions encompass countries rather than areas or within one country. And they're expanding. So I think probably in the next 10 years in rugby union, you'll find potentially the amalgamation into a world league. There's 2 basic leagues in rugby union at the moment. One is a Southern Hemisphere competition between franchises based in South Africa, Australia and New Zealand, and the other one is a European-based competition with clubs based through France, Italy and into the UK. So probably the next step from that is the change would be encompassing that into a world league. That's probably the logical next step. The economy is definitely impacting on that change though, and I think probably the change will happen in 10 years because that's a certainty, but I think you'll see more change towards the end of that 10-year cycle than the start of it, because I think at the moment everyone's just in survival mode. And if you can't take a business case or a project to a superior that's going to show added value to the business that you work in, it's just brand value and it's going to build this and build that. Well, unless you can produce profit for your business, they're not going to look at it. So I think a lot of the change that you'll see will be, you know, that 5 to 10 year period rather than the 0 to 5 years if you extrapolate it out, if that makes sense.